So welcome. I've put a picture of Natalie that Louise gave us, and I thought we would spend a bit of time today reflecting on Natalie's contribution to our lives and to the life of the office, noting that she was the mother, I would call the mother of the office, and she also was probably the greatest advocate for West Papua that I've met, apart from Louise, but certainly for Natalie, she was a wonderful advocate, and an honouring of her and her family at this time. So I'll leave it over. I'll ask you, Louise, if you'd like to give us a little bit of background, because you know more about Natalie's contribution than most of us. So I'll put it over to you to start with.
Well, thanks, Robert. The office started in 2015, but actually Natalie was working very hard on West Papua, more or less since Jacob came here. Soon after he did, which was in 1999, Alphonse and Natalie came round here. They just heard, I think Jacob was here, they didn't know him, and came round here, and so almost immediately Natalie started working in her great capacity as a cook. And our first event was in 2000, raising the flag with all the trade unions, signing that memorandum of understanding. It was in Capitol Theatre at the RMIT University, and I didn't know Natalie very well, but I said, I think there'll be 500 people there, at least. Because I'd sort of just come from the East Timor movement, and I just thought everyone would automatically help out on West Papua as well. Anyway, so it was a very big theatre, and the trade union choir came, and it was a flag raising, and Natalie's two, they were young boys then, beautifully dressed with little white gloves. I think Shaka was only about 5 or something, a little cherub face, and raised the flags, and there was about 50 in the audience. But Natalie, we'd got Bay Marie's and everything, and so she had 500 of everything, whatever she'd cooked.
Oh no!
And yeah, it was. So we were madly giving away plastic bags then, as we did right up until when was she here last? At the last open dinner, which was last December, giving away plastic bags full of food after overcooking, based on my estimation of how many would be there. So that was the first thing, and I think if I was Natalie, I would have told me to get nicked after that, but she didn't. And so right throughout, until the opening of the office, every event, not just for politics, but within the community, community events as well, Natalie was always the heart and soul of cooking these for these massive numbers of people. And sometimes when you start dealing in massive numbers, you don't take so much notice of finer details. That was never the case with Natalie. On occasions, I'd help out down there with her, just chopping up, and she was constantly getting a little spoon and tasting the sauce and adjusting the spices and saying, if there were a lot of white Australians there, she'd say, do you reckon this will be too hot for them? It was this constant and very dedicated perfectionism, which she never really exposed publicly, but it was there, and so eventually we started Dapur Sempari so that she could really take it to hopefully a different level of business, in terms of advertising and maybe making some money from it. That happened after a big event that she did for the Pacific community over in Footscray in about 2000 and 12, where, I mean, more or less alone, she catered for 1,000 people. And they weren't people like at our office who were very devoted to West Papua. They were film people. There was a big art exhibition, big music exhibition, and they were more tuned to West Papua than most, but like it was a government-run thing. And so Natalie really had to step up there with giving quotes and all sorts of things, and she sort of rose to that as well, and they really loved her work. So she did a lot of outside catering based on the fact that she was West Papuan, even though she's actually not West Papuan. So government organisations like Multicultural Arts and Pacifica Arts down in the Footscray Art Centre and those sort of places, they really loved her food as well. So it wasn't just us. And the first few times the office had open days, because of the type of people who came, they were mostly rent collective in those days, they were used to bringing their own food, so they used to bring plates of food. But slowly as they realised what Natalie's food was like, they slowly stopped that and preferred to pay $10 instead. So it was she never really appeared to be a perfectionist, but in terms of food, she really, really was a perfectionist and was incredibly dedicated to getting the right recipes for the right occasion, and within those recipes, the right amount of spice, realising that Asians and West Papuans and Pacific people preferred different spices to what white Australians could eat. So that's a strong memory I have of Natalie. But another one that happened on the first day the office opened, I can't remember whether it was Natalie or Alphonse told me, but it was that they hadn't been to Docklands since 1982. I don't think any of us really knew where Docklands was in those days, but we got this office and went down there, and both of them said this is where we first met, which seemed like an unlikely story. Lots of Natalie stories you think, well, this can't be true, but then you find out it is. And what happened was in 1982, a ship was docking in Docklands, which was then a big trading harbour for wool and other sorts of things. And it was the first Indonesian ship allowed in by the Maritime Union, who had put a ban on Indonesian shipping in 1969 in response to the disastrous way the Act of Free Choice was run. And in 1982, they lifted the ban. I don't quite know why. But Indonesia was still suspicious, so they flew this ship in under the Panama flag and docked. And because it was an Indonesian ship, Natalie's mother went there and picked out Alphonse, basically from standing on the wharf and looking at who was down below, and said, I want him as the husband for my daughter, 18-year-old Natalie, standing alongside her. So that was kind of arranged in 3 days. He got 3 days shore leave and didn't return to the ship. So that was the origins of the marriage, and they hadn't been back to Docklands since. So the opening of the office was very auspicious for them, and they couldn't believe that it was actually happening, you know, with this great story behind it. Docklands by 2015, of course, had closed as a harbour except for, you know, sort of yachts and things, private yachts. But back in the 80s, it was still a hub of commerce, maritime commerce. And also Docklands in the meantime had been, what do you call it? Filled up, you know, changed. It's the path of the river had been changed so that it was a suitable harbour for these private ships, but also could allow all the land that's being built there. I think we call it filling in or something. There was quite a lot of land changing techniques that were put in place before the Docklands that we know today emerged, yeah, which was only in the early 2000s. So, yeah.
And what date was again the office opened? Just
2000, well, 2000 and, I think it was 15, wasn't it? I know we had a prayer day opening, and in those days, the prayer days went all day, and that ended up being a bit much.
Yeah. I had my first migraine after that. Because what's his name got us to fast, and I'd fasted all day. And, you know, we had this big prayer vigil.
Yeah.
And I ended up, I won't tell you what happened on the train, but it wasn't good.
Oh, was that Robert Wolfgram?
No, it was with Ricard.
Oh, Ricard, right.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, we soon chopped it back to 1 hour a month, but the first few times were all day affairs, and used to drain us all. It was a bit too much, but it was Natalie and Babawan that really wanted that, although they agreed it was too long all day. But that's what they thought should have happened, and so it did happen. And so their influence endures in terms of prayer and food. But also Natalie was great at going out and trying, at least, as all of us have done, to get the Papuans in Melbourne involved in not just office life, but much more involved in the politics. She never, like Peter Woods said this morning, he could never get over the fact that she never gave up, even though they didn't really respond in strong sort of ways. She never gave up. And I know personally that one of her great personal achievements, she felt, was saving Decky's 2 children from being adopted out by human services. She was so intent that they shouldn't leave the community, and it was through her efforts. You could probably remember her bringing the second baby into the office in the pram. Yeah, so but both those children have stayed inside the community, and really and almost solely because of Natalie's efforts. She was determined not to let them be adopted into the public welfare system. Yeah, so a big loss and a huge influence. And she was also very good at translating what the Papuans kind of meant sometimes. People like Nellie, and sometimes Babawan. It was a language thing, but it was also a lack of. There was a big gap between the culture of the Papuans and the culture of the Australians in the office, and it was caused a lot of tension and misunderstandings over the time. But Natalie sort of could be relied on eventually to hand over the Papuans' point of view if you pushed her a bit, which was important. So that was, and she could do that because she was Indonesian, but her heritage through her mother was also Western. Her father was from Malacca, so Tommy told me this morning, and her mother, and they met in Jakarta. Her mother was from Kalimantan, and they met in Jakarta. And Tommy told me this morning, because he rang, and her mother, Natalie's mother, actually sewed Tommy's Malaccan costume for his wedding in 1986. Yeah. So they've been friends for a long time, and he was really good at sending, while Natalie's, for the last 6 months at least, he's been sending music to her that she really loved on WhatsApp. He knew her taste and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
So I might think of other things, but they were the main things I thought of after we got the news at about 6 o'clock this morning. I thought, oh my God, what are we going to do without her?
Mm.